You see it every day, even if you don't consciously register it. The colleague who just bought a new SUV, the neighbor who upgraded to a larger house, the couple posting photos from a European summer that seems to stretch on forever. None of them look reckless. They look composed, responsible, normal, and that's what makes it unsettling, because if you run the math quietly in your head, something doesn't add up. Their lifestyle appears to be accelerating faster than their income should allow, yet nothing is visibly breaking. This is where the illusion begins. Not because these people are lying, but because modern wealth signaling has become decoupled from actual financial strength. What you're seeing is not net worth, it's a payment schedule. Most people assume that visible wealth is funded by surplus, extra income, disciplined investing, long-term compounding. But in reality, much of what looks like wealth is funded by leverage layered on top of stable cash flow. If you earn $120,000 a year, banks and financing companies don't see a person, they see a predictable revenue stream. Against that stream, they are willing to advance capital. A $900 monthly car payment, a $4,200 mortgage, a $1,100 private school tuition. None of these require wealth. They require compliance with a monthly obligation. When someone says, how can they afford that? The honest answer is usually, they can afford the payment, not the asset, and there's a critical difference between those two concepts. In business, revenue and profit are not the same thing. A company can generate millions in sales and still be fragile if its margins are thin. Households work the same way. Gross income can be high while financial resilience remains low. Consider a professional household earning $180,000 combined. On paper, that's solidly upper middle income. After federal and state taxes, maybe $125,000 remains. Now subtract $50,000 for housing, $18,000 for cars, $22,000 for childcare, $12,000 for health insurance and medical expenses, $10,000 for travel, and $8,000 for dining and subscriptions. Suddenly, you're left with roughly $5,000 a year. That's not wealth building, that's survival with premium finishes. What makes this dangerous isn't the spending itself. It's the compression of margin. In investing, margin of safety is what allows you to survive volatility. In personal finance, margin is what allows you to absorb shocks without changing your identity or your lifestyle. When 90% of your income is pre-allocated, you are not wealthy no matter how impressive the surface looks. You are fully deployed. This is why the illusion persists. From the outside, everything looks calm. Payments are being made, the house is clean, the car starts, vacations happen on schedule, but underneath, optionality is disappearing. The ability to say no to work, to step away, to pivot careers, to take risk when opportunity appears, that optionality requires slack. And slack has become socially invisible. A generation ago, wealth was often associated with ownership. You owned your home outright, you drove a car until it died, your expenses fell as your income rose. Today, the pattern has inverted. Expenses rise in parallel with income, preserving the feeling of scarcity while projecting abundance. This is lifestyle creep, but not in the shallow sense of buying nicer things. It's deeper. It's the normalization of permanent obligations. Let's look at leverage, because this is where the illusion gains structural support. Leverage is not inherently bad. In business, leverage is how you scale returns, but leverage magnifies fragility when applied to consumption rather than production. A mortgage on a rental property can generate cash flow. A mortgage on a primary residence generates comfort and status, but it doesn't generate income. It generates maintenance. When households use leverage to consume future income, they are effectively pre-spending their autonomy. A 30-year mortgage is not just a housing decision, it's a career decision. It assumes stability of income, health, and labor market relevance over 3 decades. That assumption is rarely examined, because culturally we treat debt as neutral as long as payments clear. This is why so many high earners feel trapped. They did everything right according to the script. Education, career, promotions, yet their psychological baseline hasn't improved. They earn more but feel no freer. The reason is that freedom doesn't come from income, it comes from the gap between income and obligation. That gap is what allows compounding to work in your favor instead of against you. Here's a simple numerical contrast. Person A earns $90,000 and lives on $55,000. Person B earns $180,000 and lives on $165,000. Person B looks wealthy. Person A is actually building it. At a 6% real return, investing $35,000 a year for 25 years produces roughly $2 million. Investing $15,000 a year produces less than half of that. The difference isn't intelligence or discipline, it's margin. The fake rich illusion thrives because humans are pattern-matching creatures. We infer success from visible cues. Nice home, new car, frequent travel. But these cues no longer correlate strongly with net worth. They correlate with access to credit and willingness to convert future time into present consumption. This is why comparisons feel confusing. You are comparing your internal balance sheet to someone else's external cash flow. There's also a psychological layer. Spending often rises to meet identity. When someone enters a higher income bracket, there's an unspoken expectation to live like it. Neighborhoods, schools, social circles recalibrate. The cost of belonging increases. What starts as comfort becomes baseline. And once baseline rises, reducing it feels like loss even if it increases freedom. This is where the illusion becomes self-reinforcing. Everyone is maintaining appearances, so everyone assumes everyone else is doing fine. No one talks about fragility. No one posts their emergency fund balance. No one shares how many months they could survive without income. Those are the metrics that actually matter. If you zoom out, you can see this pattern at the macro level. Household debt has risen faster than wages. Asset prices have inflated faster than savings rates. The system encourages participation through leverage, not ownership through patience. This works as long as income is stable and credit is cheap, but it leaves individuals exposed to shocks they didn't model for. None of this means that enjoying money is wrong. The issue is not consumption, it's conversion efficiency. How much of your labor is being converted into future freedom versus present maintenance? In business terms, are you reinvesting profits or distributing them all as dividends? A company that never reinvests eventually stagnates. A household that never reinvests remains dependent on labor. The uncomfortable truth is that many people you think are ahead are simply further along a path of dependency. They have locked in a higher burn rate. Their lifestyle requires their continued participation in the labor market at a specific income level. That's not success, it's a narrow operating range. Real wealth tends to look boring. It's unremarkable on the surface because it's optimized for control, not display. It shows up as low fixed costs, high savings rates, diversified income streams, and the ability to make asymmetric bets when opportunities arise. It shows up as patience. If you're feeling behind despite doing everything right, it's worth interrogating the metric you're using. If the metric is visual parity, you will always lose to leverage. If the metric is optionality, the game changes. Suddenly, the quiet decisions matter more than the visible ones. The question is not how they afford it. The question is what it's costing them in terms of future choices. Every fixed expense is a claim on your time. Every payment is a small mortgage on your autonomy. When you add them up, they define your long-term trajectory far more than your income headline. Wealth is not built by matching lifestyles. It's built by widening the gap between what you earn and what you need. That gap is where compounding lives. That gap is where leverage works for you instead of against you. And that gap is almost always invisible. Once you see this clearly, the illusion loses its power. You stop asking how others afford it and you start asking whether you want the same constraints. You begin to measure progress not by upgrades but by degrees of freedom. Not by what you can buy but by what you can walk away from.